Hey everyone, what's going on? It's 2 minutes to review. Yeah, that's right. I went there.
And I keep telling you, Matt, we don't have the legal rights for that.
Good thing I changed the lyrics. I'm Matt.
No, that doesn't matter. I'm Zack.
Album reviews in under 2 minutes. Longest album review in under 2 minutes wins. New album from Death from Above, 1979. Zack, hit him with the details.
For a band that only has 4 albums, they've really left an impact on the alt-rock and indie rock scene for the past 2 decades. I personally have always loved them. I mean, I'm not normally a guy who likes dance rock or dance punk or even noise rock, but something about Death from Above 1979 always pleases me. Both fans and critics alike have always been raving about this group. Jesse F. Keeler and Sebastien Grainger are usually always reliable for some mind-bending kind of music. For something that's so simple, the kind of music that they produce, they find a way to make it melodic yet technical. And with their 4th album, Is for Lovers, see what they did there with the little number 4, 4th album? They are back in full force, and I was just really excited to give this album a listen. It's been 4 years or so since they released Outrageous Now, and I still go back to The Physical World, their 2nd album, nonstop, and that's been out for many, many years too. So it was really exciting to finally get new music from this Canadian duo. So exciting, in fact, Matt, I am going to urge you to let me go first.
Well, what I'm going to also say before we get into the review is that this is actually my first exposure to Death from Above. I've heard them before. I've never really gotten into them. It just never really,
which is
tickled
funny.
my fancy.
I feel like this is a band that you would have enjoyed.
It just never piqued my interest. I never really just, said, what, I got to listen to this band. And if I did, I probably picked the wrong song to listen to. And I was like, I'm just not interested. So this is going to be very interesting. But yeah, also, we got to say a very special shout out to our sponsors, the Lucky 13 Beard Company. If you've ever seen our videos, Zack and I, 2 bearded men, got to love these products. Help us maintain our beards, help us smell really good too.
Yeah, I know, really great flavors.
My personal favorite is tobacco vanilla, and they just released a cherry cola flavor. Also, in addition, they just put out a combination of those two as well, a cherry tobacco vanilla.
And if you head over right now to etsy.com/shop/Lucky13BeardCo and use the code EFP10, you will receive 10% off of your order. Guys, treat yourself to a better, more luxurious beard. And ladies, treat that special bearded someone in your life to a gift you'll end up appreciating just as much as them. Again, etsy.com/shop/Lucky13BeardCo and use the code EFP10 to receive 10% off your order.
While you're listening to the reviews,
you could argue that hearing 2 bearded men talk about music is the perfect soundtrack to buying beard oil. Just saying.
There you go.
Just my 2 cents.
All right. So if you want to go first for this review,
I beg you, sir, let me go first.
Have at it.
Let me know then when you're ready to keep time of my perfect review. And by perfect, I mean it's not going to be perfect at all. It's going to be rambling, I'm sure, but it's still going to be under 2 minutes. I promise.
Such a big promise from you, and yet you never deliver.
I've delivered sometimes.
I just hope that doesn't happen with your wife. 3, 2, 1.
Hold on. You can't get personal expecting me to deliver under pressure. That's what she said. Anyway, count me down again.
3, 2, 1. Here we go.
Both Jesse and Sebastien have said that they wanted to make a more fun, playful album. And dare I say, they succeeded with full colors. They provided a fun, borderline danceable record without losing any of that noisy punk grit that you've come to love. I mean, songs like Modern Guy and Totally Wiped Out prove that. It really captures everything I love about the band. At one moment, you feel like you want to just mosh and go crazy, and the next you want to feel like you're dancing. And I am constantly surprised and just amazed by Jesse's bass tone. Every time I hear some of his riffs, I'm like, no, there's no way that's a bass. The noise and the sounds he gets out of that instrument, it's borderline Lemmy on steroids. And you can tell that he's just having the most fun he's had in a long time when you hear the first single, 1+1, and even Mean Streets, which is a little bit slower, which leads me to, while the first half of the album is definitely more fun and in your face, like you're familiar with Def from Above. They definitely take a more ambient and slow, jammy vibe in the middle, toward the end, to the point that I was really surprised to hear a song like Glass Homes that sounds more like a Daft Punk with drums song. And then even Mean Streets, besides a little punk rock energy and thrown in the middle, was definitely a little bit slower and jammier. But at the same time, I didn't feel like it was completely out of left field. It actually complemented each other so well. I'm going to be honest. I would not say that I will find myself revisiting this album the same way I constantly revisit The Physical World. It just doesn't have the same lasting impression. I will say, though, that this is a vast improvement of Outrageous Now, which I really felt was lacking something. This album is just pure fun and enjoyable to the point that I don't feel like it's a chore re-listening. I feel energized. And if you really need something to get you out of a funk or just let loose for a few minutes by yourself while you're in quarantine, this album will definitely help.
Time, and what is your star rating?
I keep going between a 3.5 and a 4. Realistically, I'm saying 3.5, but at this very second, I feel like I'm going to end up giving it a 3.5 as time evolves, because I don't think it's as lasting as The Physical World, which, mind you, some people aren't even a huge fan of that album, but I'd say somewhere between 3.5 and 4, like literally in the middle of that. It's a fun album.
So 3.75 stars.
Yeah, I'll give it 3. Thank you, Matt. This is the first time I think either of us really fully realized we could probably just do quarters, huh? Yeah. 3
you know what,
quarters.
though? Yeah.
It's kind of cheating, but.
Kind of, but you know what? I'll allow it.
Oh, thank you. What a gentleman. Really, if you're a fan of the band, I really would be surprised if you don't enjoy it. So, Matt, are you ready?
I suppose I'm ready. Let's do this thing.
3, 2, 1, go.
So for this being my first album with the band, it really surprised me how much it reminded me of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. But that's really not a bad thing, since I love Scott Pilgrim. And if you listen to New York City Power Elite or NYC Power Elite Part 1, that's where you're really going to get it. And I really dig that track. One of the other things that really surprised me about this album, not so much that it surprised me, but one of the things that I really liked about the album was that the production, and I said this about another album that we just reviewed, that it really requires you to turn it up and listen to it. It's not a quiet album by any stretch of the imagination, and even when it is quiet, it sounds loud, so I like that a lot. I really enjoy the sound separation that they get between only two guys, bass and drums. There's a lot of this that's going on right now. There's some people that do it really well, and another one is like Royal Blood, but these guys do it really well as well. And another big thing that hit me when I was listening to this album is that Modern Guys reminds me of what the Foo Fighters should have done on Medicine at Midnight, and they've done songs like White Limo in the past, so I know that they have it in them. Why not do that if you wanted to do a party album? Because it does sound like it's a party. But one of the biggest problems about this album for me is that it is only, say, around 35 minutes with 10 songs. That's very short, considering that some of their other songs on other albums are like 4 minutes long and they have multiple 4-minute songs. Why did you cut this one short? And to conclude my review, I'm going to say that I was really surprised by the last 4 tracks, that they stepped outside of that wall of fuzz sound, and it was really nice, once again, in a Scott Pilgrim-esque way, or like an 80s era Nintendo way, like in Glass Homes. They brought in all of that like video game nostalgia for me, which is really cool. I know they're not a Nintendo rock band or anything like that, but it was just great to hear that, and I like this a little bit more than I care to admit.
You liked this more than you care to admit. What a great pull quote.
Yeah, you know what, though? Because it could be almost like a guilty pleasure in a way.
You really did a great job at nailing down to, this is what Medicine at Midnight really should have sounded like. This is what a party Foo Fighters album should have been. Right. Not that they're like a Foo, I mean, not that.
No, they're not the Foo Fighters
sounds like
any
Foo Fighters.
Stretch of the imagination.
But there's definitely elements, and it's funny you mentioned White Limo, because there's one song on the album that I'm like, I'm getting some White Limo vibes. They do a great job at balancing heaviness and melody, kind of like the Foo Fighters, in a way.
What kind of killed it for me, like in a good way, is that it didn't just stay in one spot. You know, it did kind of go all over the place and it felt cohesive. They get this sound separation, and then you think, okay, with drums and bass, you can only do so much. There's more going on here than drums and bass. Obviously, there's electronic elements that are going on in the background, but it's never the same thing. It's never, you know, we're just going to rehash. You know how on some albums, and I thought about this the other night when I watched the Dropkick Murphys, they have a song that sounds just like Shipping Up to Boston. And I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it sounds like they took the riff from Shipping Up to Boston and said, you know what, maybe we can get another hit out of this, but they didn't. And they could have very easily done something like that where, you know, because they're doing so much, it's like, you know what, let's just take this, maybe do it in like a minor key, or, you know, take it like a step down, or just change it up slightly. So you're like, oh, you know, this is what I'm familiar with already. But they don't do that. They go all over the place, and especially the last half of the album when they're doing something, like I said, totally different than that wall of fuzz sound. And I like that.
To your point, when you're saying they were all over, I think you hit it perfectly too, in that it's kind of amazing that for an album that's kind of all over the place, it does sound so cohesive. It does sound like everything you hear on this album belongs together.
Yes.
Where so many bands just fail at that. But you know what? What's your star rating? We didn't get to that.
Star ranking, I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Wow.
Yeah. It's good. I'm not going to lie.
It's just something about it is it's complex but fun. This album really is proof that polar opposites can still exist. And you mentioned about the production. I think it's worth noting that this was a self-produced album.
It sounds good.
You hear so many stories of when bands try to take control of their sound and they just overbloat it, or they just don't know what they're doing.
Yep.
These guys just did a great job on their own.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, when it's quiet, it's loud. I forget what I was doing, but I was in my car and I was listening to it, and I'm thinking to myself, God, this is like loud. And I looked at where my volume was, and I'm like, this is weird, because my radio goes from like 1 to 30, I think, is like the loudest it goes. And it was on 6. I'm like, this is loud for like volume 6. That took me by surprise, how much that fuzz and how much that wall actually punches through and makes you feel like, you know, you're still rocking, or you're still having, you know, that proverbial party on this album.
Yeah.
And you're not even trying to, from my standpoint, I'm just trying to analyze and figure out, do I like it? What's the sound like? What are the lyrics? You know, where are we with this whole thing? And here I am still being punched with that wall of sound, and I liked it.
Honestly, just talking about it again, I think I'm going to go to the 4. I'm changing my rating. No, because like it's everything that they do on this album should not be good, and yet it really is.
When two people know what they're doing, it shows.
Like I said, for the past 2 decades, they've been wowing everyone, and this album proves that all the hype that this band gets is worth it all. But you know what, Matt? We're just 2 bearded nerds. Our opinion doesn't really matter. What it matters is, did I beat you in giving a review in under 2 minutes?
I don't think you did.
You don't think I did? Why? Nope. What was my time?
Zach, your time as par for the course, 2 minutes 16.
Not terrible. Guess what, Matt?
I went over 2 minutes as well.
You went over 2 minutes, but only by 1 second. So Mazel Tov for being slightly better. But guess what? We both lose.
We could say that's the fudge factor, and I hit exactly 2 minutes.
No, that I'm counting the fudge. Buddy, I'm being very nice. Trust me.
Okay.
But you know what? Let us know what you think. Are we wrong? Are we way off? Did we hit the nail on the head? Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. Subscribe to our YouTube page as well for more podcasts and videos. And as mentioned before, head over to etsy.com/shop/lucky13beardco right now and use the code EFP10 to receive 10% off of your order of some amazing beard oil and balm products. Really great stuff. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you join us again real soon.
See ya.